Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves and each other and the world. Let's take a moment. We can unmute ourselves. If you've got sound there on your computer, and say hello to one another. We can't hug each other. Hug somebody you're with, hug your cat, hug yourself. But we can greet each other. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Nope, don't hear a lot of voices yet. I know you're calling out there. Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
There we go.
Here we go.
Morning.
Oh.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. This is Karen.
Amy, that was a big sigh just before we started. I hope things are well.
Just taking a deep breath, relaxing. I don't have my choir warm-ups anymore.
Hello, Isa. Hi, Bill.
And I've checked that already.
Hi, DJ.
Morning, folks. Hi, Meg.
Yeah.
All right. So good to hear everyone's voices. We'll have the audio off again until the very end of the service when we turn it on, and along with our video for our benediction, and then and just check, there's lots of stuff going on this week. So when you get a moment, click on through to the What's Happening link to make sure you don't miss out on anything good in our community this week. There's also calling underway. If you're a member or a friend, you've probably gotten a call. I think we've reached about 2/3 of our folks, but we'd like to make lots more calls, and they're really fun. So if you would like to have more of these phone conversations and you haven't been signed up to make any calls, sign up to call a couple more folks. And if you reach them, you'll have an interesting conversation with someone you miss or someone you've never met. And now, let us begin our service. Our chalice lighting comes from Doni Boy Gino. It is one of the global chalice lightings that the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists sends out each month. I believe in the energy, the source of all creatures. I believe in our limitless power, the mystery of being human. I am hoping for your guidance to discover my fears, doubts, and joys, that my fears become my strength, the darkness becomes my light, my greatest failure becomes my greatest achievement. Because as human beings, all things happen for a reason which molds and strengthens our personality. As my journey moves to the next level, you may bless my mind and heart to love and respect all existence in this world. Amen. With our centering words each week, we draw on one of the sources of our living tradition. Today, our words come from author Priya Parker. Gathering matters because it is through each other that we figure out what we believe. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, let us arrive here in our gathered space to be together. Please join now in singing Gather the Spirit. Bruce will lead us, and the words are printed in your order of service.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power, our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour, our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
I heard that because of COVID, our congregation is losing lots of rental income.
How can we raise money to help? I've got it. We'll be the contestants in game shows.
Whatever prize money we win, we'll give to the congregation.
Here's Alex Tribble.
This is Lethargy, America's favorite answer and question show. Today's contestants are John and Sarah from Silicon Valley.
Hi.
Hi.
And our returning contestant is Sigmund Freud from Freiburg, Austria.
Hello.
Here are the three categories in this round: famous Unitarians, famous Universalists, and famous Unitarian Universalists.
I'll take famous Unitarians for $200.
She wrote the famous children's book, Little Women.
Ooh, I know. Who was Louisa May Alcott?
That's correct!
I'll take famous Universalists for $500.
He started a famous circus.
Who was P.T. Barnum?
That's correct!
I choose famous Unitarian Universalists for $1,000.
The answer is the inventor of the World Wide Web.
What is the interpretation of dreams?
No.
Ooh, I know. Who is Tim Berners-Lee?
That's correct! Now it's time for final lethargy. The category is Unitarian, Universalist, hymns. Whoever gets this right wins $100,000. And the answer is the hymn with a rose in the winter time.
I know.
Oh,
What is Come Sing a Song with Me?
John and Sarah, you each win $100,000. Today's third place contestant wins a beautiful lounge suite.
I hate lounge suites.
Wow, we won.
We have $200,000 to give to our congregation.
Tune in next week when I host another game show.
Thank you, Alex Triple, and this is Johnny Gilbert saying so long for now.
John and Sarah, I hope you will keep some of your winnings, but thank you for your generosity. Everyone, this is the time to share our joys and sorrows. I've received a few at joyconcern@uucpa.org, so I will begin sharing those. You can post more to that email address and I'll keep checking, and you can also write them right here in the chat. I'm sorry if you're watching us on Facebook Live, I can't follow that chat, but again, you can send it to joyconcern@uucpa.org, and I will receive it and share it with everybody. Thank you all for sharing these parts of your life with us, and thank you everyone for being willing to hear one another's joys and sorrows and keep this community knitted close. So let us take some time of silence to allow in the full awareness of what people have shared, their losses and worries and their joys, and to become aware also of some of the feelings that may not even bubble up to the surface until we have this quiet time, so that we can share with one another what is happening in our lives and be close and offer our care. Blessed be. Let us sing once again, For All That Is Our Life. Again, the words are in your order of service, and Bruce will lead us. Sing out wherever you are.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own
Our reading comes from the Reverend Mark Morrison Reed. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. What would you be doing right now if there weren't a pandemic? What would you do after this service? What would you do this evening, do you suppose? Tomorrow? This summer? Chances are, at least some of your answers are quite different than what you are actually going to do now. Maybe you were planning to have a visit from your grandchildren this summer and actually hold them in your lap. Or maybe you'd be getting together for lunch with a friend in a restaurant today. Maybe you had a trip planned to somewhere far away that you're now wondering if you'll ever see. Or maybe you would simply have spent a few hours in the library now and then, enjoying the space, the quiet companionship with the other book lovers. This pandemic has not only created loss and stress, but it has deprived us of the very things that we do to cope with loss and stress. Clearly, we need to find substitutes. We've done that here at UUCPA in the ways that we can, with our online services, with classes that meet via Zoom, with classes that teach us how to meet via Zoom, with phone calls filling in for in-person conversations and videos filling in for live music. But we can do more and must push further. And I wonder how it's working out in the rest of our lives. Priya Parker writes and speaks about gatherings, how we gather, why we gather, and this is the crux, whether the two are connected. Oftentimes, she says, they get disconnected. We keep having our gatherings, but we get stuck on the forms that we're used to, the how of our gatherings, whether a professional conference and how that ought to go, because that's how it always goes, or a child's birthday party, and we have to have this element or that element because that's what you do at a birthday party. Sometimes we forget the why, she says. What is the purpose of these gatherings? Now, sometimes old forms serve us perfectly well, and that's why we keep using them. And sometimes we have to delve into the why, to rework the old forms into something that will serve us better, even before the pandemic. For example, she gives the case of a couple that were expecting a baby, a man and a woman, and found themselves thoroughly unthrilled at the prospect of a baby shower and its usual activities. It just didn't seem to meet any need of theirs. It seemed to be just one more thing they were supposed to do when they were expecting. So they asked themselves what they actually needed right then. And the woman who was expecting to go into labor within a couple of months found she had a lot of needs as parenthood approached, as did both of them together. For a start, she was really, really afraid of labor. And when they invited several friends to help create for them a celebration of coming parenthood, they responded to these real needs that the couple expressed. For example, Parker relates that her friends responded to her fear of labor by telling her stories from her own life of times that she had demonstrated courage and persistence and surrender, things that would go with her into the delivery room. She and her husband were naturally nervous about the huge and permanent change that they were making to their marriage. And so as part of the celebration, their friends invited them to write new vows and share them right there, promising each other how they would be together as a couple as they moved into this new stage of their life. They recreated this occasion. They left out some of the old forms because pin the diaper on the baby just didn't meet any need of theirs the way it might for other folks. And they decided instead to make it a deeply meaningful response, as baby showers were always intended to be, to a big change in life. Now, of course, we are being compelled to change from our conventional forms. We have to change the way we gather. In Jim Scott's YouTube page, the composer of Gather the Spirit, he shares a coronavirus version, and I've put the link to it down at the bottom of the order of service if you want to hear the whole thing. The words were written by his friend Pat LaManna, and he sings it with good spirit. Gather on Skype, gather on Zoom, gather by phone with family and friends. Gather online, but don't leave your room. Let's all stay safe until this crisis ends. When we are faced with a challenge like this of reworking the ways that we gather, there are a couple of risks. One is that we'll just transfer our usual ways into a new medium. And sometimes that works pretty well. Some kinds of gatherings work quite well just by Zoom. Some of them work better. If you used to call up your brother and have a long conversation, maybe it's really nice to see each other face to face, which was a technology you hadn't used before. But sometimes many elements of our old gatherings just don't transfer into this new medium. And so important things are lost. And we aren't allowing ourselves to be aware of that exactly. Another risk is that, unable to meet in the way we would like to, we just try to do without. For example, for a couple of months I said, we're just not going to have a flower communion this year. And that seemed okay when it was just a couple of months. And then as it became clear that we would not be able to have an in-person flower communion until the next flower communion time at the earliest, that no longer seemed viable. It's as if we're going to just try to tread water for a while. And again, when the news was new, that might have worked. For a couple of months, you can just do without your usual kinds of gatherings. But we are now in the 5th month of this isolation. And without widespread testing and contact tracing and physical distancing, we are unlikely to see a fall in cases anytime soon. We can't tread water forever. We can't tread water for a year. We need the things that community brings us, and we need them now. So we need to ask, as we shift our kinds of gathering, why do we need community? Why do we gather? Some of Priya Parker's questions for us to ask ourselves are, what are the needs that this gathering meets? What are we hoping will happen when we gather? In what way do we hope we will be different as a result of this community's coming together? You know, I call this sermon New Visions of Community, but it's really not about a new vision. The how might be new, or at least different than what we're used to. We might meet in a different way, but the why we meet, that's old. And that's where we have to start, by asking that question that sometimes can get lost after years, after generations of following the same forms. Why do we have the communities that we do? And why do we do the things together in those communities that we do? So let's use UUCPA as an example. What are our purposes as a religious community? I mean, okay, so we have sort of the functions, okay? We hold services, we sing our songs, we gather and discuss, we have classes for people of all ages, we visit one another at times of illness and loneliness, we band together for justice. Those are all things we do together, but that's still kind of some of the how Let's go down another level, go back a little further, dig a little deeper into the why we do those things. Well, we could stay here all day while I try to list all the things I've ever heard from all of you about why we do what we do together, but I'll list a few. One, as Parker identified in the words that we heard earlier in the service, to discover what we believe, to be inspired and strengthened to live out those beliefs, to be reminded of what matters most, to notice the uncomfortable disconnections that sometimes happen between what we profess about what's important and how we live, to help new generations know the wisdom that people have gathered over the ages, to help other people to know our love, to find the meanings of our lives, to find reasons to carry on when despair or grief, meaninglessness, numbness, and the other viruses of the spirit attack us, to rediscover beauty and joy. We do all the things we do as a congregation to grow and change into whom we hope we will become next. We do it to know ourselves to be a part of something beyond and greater than ourselves, and to glimpse for a moment the ways that this larger essence lives within and through us as well. We gather to realign our lives with what Howard Thurman called our moments of high resolve. We gather, as Mark Morrison Reed said, to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. And once we discover that connectedness, to act upon it together, inspired and strengthened by one another. Is there anything about being online that makes it harder to achieve these goals? Well, sure, absolutely. And not just because we're used to certain ways of doing things. But here we are. This is how we gather in this new time. Not forever, but for longer than we would like. So let's reflect on the why or whys of our gatherings, and then we'll have a better idea of the hows. We've gathered the ways that we have because they were suited to these purposes, or we thought they were. Here's something that I've been realizing now that we've been denied our usual forms. For a long time, we've tried to make our services accessible even to folks who have limited mobility. Maybe it's very hard for them to get to church on their own in the mornings by, among other things, offering people rides. That doesn't work very well for a lot of folks. Folks who have limited mobility and energy, they might make an arrangement to have a ride with somebody on a regular basis and really appreciate that. But then, and this is feedback we've gotten from some folks, they say, you know, sometimes I think I want to go to church and I wake up on Sunday and I just know I don't have the energy to go. Well, I've said to them, that's totally fine. The person who gives you a ride knows that. It's fine up to the last hour to call them up and just say, not going this morning. Thanks so much. Hope I see you next week. But people don't generally want to do that. And so that's where we've kind of gotten stuck. People who really need a ride if they're to get to our building, to be here in person. And yet, even a generous offer to bring them here does not meet all of their needs. I've just accepted that as a given. We've done all that we can. That's what I thought. And now that we're meeting by Zoom, some folks are coming to our services online who have not gotten out of the house to come here for a long time. And I realize, I thought we were being accessible, but we weren't being as accessible as we could have been. This was another way that we could bring people to church. And now I hope we will never stop. This is a way you can come to church even if you don't have the energy, the mobility, or for whatever reason you just cannot get out of the house and come on Sunday morning. Maybe you're 1,000 miles away and you're still a part of this community. I'm so glad that we have discovered that. I'm glad we've had this shakeup, although, of course, the cost is too much to be borne. Now, other things work just wonderfully when we can be in the same room, but for now we can't, and it's a long now. So what are some other tweaks that we might make? Well, we'll know if they're needed by how we feel. You know, when you leave a gathering, you have a sense of, whether it's, you know, your book group, your lunch date, whatever, if you leave feeling great, you feel renewed, you feel more alive, your mind is spinning, or you feel held by your community, you feel connected to what matters most, that's when you know it worked. And if you leave a gathering, say an online gathering, feeling like, oh, that wasn't all those things, well, it doesn't satisfy the why of gathering. So if that happens, if you leave feeling discontented at a gathering here at church or something else in your life, please, let's not stop there. Let's not just give up, because these needs are real and important. And that moment of disconnect and discontent is a symptom. It's a clue to a diagnosis, and therefore, we hope, to a resolution. So I urge you to think right now and over the next several days, what was missing from such a gathering for you, if you did try to substitute for your old practices? What was missing? And then, of course, if you didn't have a gathering at all, what's missing from your life that you now need to fill in? Let me give you an example from my own life. I meet in a monthly group that has changed to Zoom. We used to meet in person. Now we can't. These gatherings meet the whys pretty well. Just on Zoom as in person, I'm feeling energized and inspired and glad that I took the time. Even when I start out thinking, there's other things I could do with this 2 hours, I'm really, really glad that I went. But I'm also realizing how much a silent and important part of our gathering is being in someone's home. And I'm trying to think about why and how we can make the most of that. I think it's a way that we get to know each other in a different way than by sharing our words and even by sharing hands around the circle. So can we make the most of that? After all, right now we're peeking into many rooms. I see 10 people's homes. It's not like being right inside them, but I can see a room that they're in instead of just one person's. We can't pet the cats. We can't go close up to interesting looking books on the bookshelves, but we can see more places. For example, we've seen into the kitchen of a member who has never hosted our group, and it's really lovely and striking, and we've talked to her about how it's designed and the daring color they put on the walls that we would never have put, and I know a whole new thing about her and her partner that I didn't know before. So what if we, in our monthly group, expanded on this asset of online meeting and actually took the time to introduce each other to the spaces a bit more, instead of just feeling that they're backgrounds that we're really not supposed to pay much attention to? Would that be a distraction from the purpose of the group? Well, if we think of it as this is our reading and discussion group, well, yes, it is, because it takes away some of the time for us to talk about our reading. If we remember the deeper purposes, which are to get to know each other intimately enough that we can be vulnerable and to share our whole and real selves with each other, then no, it's not a distraction. It helps us to realize the purpose. It helps to serve the why, the mission of the group. Now, you can apply this process to anything that you're missing or that you're doing but that just doesn't seem to fulfill you the way it did when you were meeting in person. Let's say you miss sitting in cafes. Well, what do you miss about them? Think about that. What about it? Why do you do it? If you follow that clue down and down until you really think about, you're really clear on what's important to you about that. So important that you're missing it right now, and it's probably not just the caffeine. Only then can you find and create the equivalent experience. And maybe some of it can't be filled in, like the hug with somebody that you often see there, or the sparkle of eyes seen up close. But maybe there are some other things that you could fill in. Seeing the staff that you know and who know you. Maybe that's meaningful to you because of the way it connects you to your community. And maybe there's another way you could connect with those staff. Or maybe you're realizing, oh, I really need to know that I'm important in my community. What I should be doing right now in place of going to a cafe is XYZ. You see, if you dig down far enough to know that purpose, then you can start to see other options. Instead of just stopping at, well, can't go to cafes. I guess that's just not going to happen for a year. The needs can't wait. They mustn't wait. Jim Scott and his friend Pat Lamara joke, gather in spirit but not face to face. But they remind us there's so many ways to sweeten the time. Time is precious, and we mustn't let a year of it grow dull and dusty. However we gather for those purposes of which we sang. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. And all the other deep needs of our lives, so many purposes, far too important to wait. The Reverend Kimberly Debus will be here in 2 weeks and talk to us on the 19th about specific ways we can meet those purposes. But you don't need to wait even that long. I hope you'll continue to think about these things and come see me on Thursday if you'd like some help, some partnership in processing. Here are the needs. How can I meet them? That's our craft and chat time every Thursday at 5 p.m. All the information is on our online character, or call me, online calendar, or call me if that doesn't work for you. We'll use that time to share what we've discovered our goals are, our needs are, the mission, the purpose of the gatherings that we're missing right now. And what about pandemic life is getting in the way of them? And together, we'll begin to craft new ways of meeting these needs, because they are too important. Life is too important. You are too important to ignore. Blessed be. Let us now, in gratitude for the ways we are connected and the ways that we are given to serve our community, give to the offering that supports the work of this liberal religious community. The order of service gives a QR code and a link, and also information on how you can use text to give via Give Lively. Please give generously. If you are visiting us for the first time, we really appreciate having you as our guest. Please just enjoy the music and let this time go by. Let us sing together, There Is More Love Somewhere. The version of this traditional song that we're singing, as has been the case with some previous songs, is a little different in the public domain than the one in our hymnal. And I'm really appreciative of Dan Harper, who does a lot of research into hymnody and has discovered a lot of the original versions of some of the hymns we know best that are in the public domain, and also honor the original authors, who oftentimes are anonymous. So this is one such song written by anonymous artists from long ago, and let us sing together the way it's here in your order of service as Bruce leads us.
I'm gonna keep on There is more love somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is happiness somewhere. There is happiness somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is happiness somewhere.
In so many ways, these are dark and difficult times. And yet, here we are, gathered together. There are so many others we can gather among us by reaching out to them and inviting them to be a part of the ways we gather today. And there are so many ways we can meet one another, even from a far, far distance, and even in what is called isolation. How lucky we are to be alive right now. So let us take the light that we have gathered today with us wherever we go. Until we meet again. Thank you. Such lovely music. I invite you now to unmute yourself, turn on your video. I know that'll take a few seconds, especially if anybody's been muted by the host, so we'll give a few moments. Please do stay after our benediction, and we'll be randomly assigned to breakout rooms. And if you want to move to another one after a while and chat with new folks, come back to the main room, and the host who will be there can send you on to a new group. The rooms will stay open for 15 minutes. Now let us say our benediction together, printed in your order of service. Go out into the world in peace. Be of courage. Hold fast to what is good. Return no evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Suffering. Grace, beauty, love, and deed.
Honor
All
all
beings.
beings.